So my first tip when it comes to silt fishing centres around the lead arrangement. Now for most of my fishing I prefer to use a lead clip setup, but when fishing particularly silty venues I will consider changing over to a helicopter setup. Here I'm using the drop-off heli buffer sleeve, and because of this time of year the weeds died back, I don't really need to drop the lead, so I can put the T-peg in and keep the lead on. Basically I'll fish that on naked line, and the benefit with the helicopter setup is that this top bead here can be moved up the line. When the lead goes into the water it will sink into the silt and the hook link will slide up the line until it hits that bead and then come to rest on top of the silt, meaning that your rig is presented where your free offerings will be and not get dragged into the silt where your rig kicked up, which can happen with a lead clip arrangement or an inline lead. Now on venues where helicopter arrangements aren't allowed and I had to use a lead clip, what I would do is, rather than using a fluorocarbon hook link, which is what I've got on this setup, I'd swap the fluorocarbon for some Camotex semi-stiff or soft, just so that you've got a nice long hook link that's got some suppleness to it that will sit on top of the silt and not get dragged in and sit horrible, which can happen with the lead clip. But wherever possible, I would go with a helicopter setup on the silt. When you're baiting up with your free offerings on a silty lake, often they can sit up into the silt and the smell of the silt can completely hide and mask the smell of the free offerings that you're putting in. What I like to do is glug them up in a nice oil such as hemp oil to ensure that when they're sat there in amongst the silt, they're kicking off loads of attraction, and any carp nearby can pick up on that taste, come in, start rooting around and find a nice bit of free food, and then hopefully pick up my hook bait, which is going to be in amongst those free offerings. So that's my second tip. When you're going to feed them on a silty lake, make sure you give them a nice, smelly, attractive bit of free food. When you're baiting up with really oily and attractive free offerings, still want the hook bait to kick out some even greater attraction to try and get you a quicker bite. Normally on a silty lake, when the fish start feeding, the silt kicks up, it clouds up, and I'm not really a big believer that a fluoro topper or a snowman's going to necessarily be seen in that kind of murky water. So I think the carp senses are more about taste than they are visual. So what I like to do to pimp my hook bait up is give it a wrap in paste with the matching paste to the bottom bait boilie that I'm fishing with. I like to fish these D-rigs when I'm fishing the bottom bait on the helicopter. I'll just take a pinch of the matching paste, flatten it off, place the bait in the centre and then just work it round. Really simple. Leave the hook sitting free so that the point isn't masked by the paste. In case you get a quick bite, you want the hook to be ready to be able to grab hold of the fish's bottom lip. Just mould it round like so. There's no danger of the hook bait wrapping round the hook and getting tangled on the cast. The paste is holding everything in position. When that lands on the bottom, you're going to be in amongst your oily freebies, but kicking out of here is this paste breaking down, putting out extra attraction, and when those fish are grubbing around in the murky water, feeding, hopefully the signals coming from here are going to concentrate them and get you that bite quicker. Now when fishing on a silty lake, there's going to be a lot of areas on the lake bed where your presentation is going to be affected by the build-up of the silt, the debris, leaf matter, and these are the kind of areas that I want to try and avoid. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find the areas of the firmer silt, the cleaner silt, where presentation is not hindered and where the fish are going to be happier to feed. That firmer area of silt is probably firm because it has been fed on before by the fish and is an area that they like to feed. So if you can find those areas, I think that's giving you a better chance of a bite. So what I do is I start by using just a 4-ounce lead on my spod rod with braided mainline, and I'll just lead about, casting, feeling for a drop, and you'll get, with silty lakes, you'll get a lot of soft landings where the lead's just plugging in that liquid, putrid silt. But by casting on a regular basis around the swim, normally aiming towards prominent features on the far bank, such as a tree or a telegraph pole, sort of areas where other anglers have probably used as markers in the past and baited. You will normally find a good firm drop where the lead hits down a lot harder. That's a great starting point. I'll then put the line in the clip, reel in, swap that lead for one of these. This is a grappling marker lead, has these 4 prongs on it. When that lands down on the lake bed and you pull it gently along the bottom, these prongs pick up anything that's on the lake bed. So weed, leaf matter, twigs, even some natural food such as bloodworm can get caught up in these prongs. So what that allows me to do is cast to the spot that I found where I'm getting that hard drop, where I'm suspecting that that's going to be a cleaner area to present, and this is helping me to confirm or to dismiss that area. I'll cast this out probably 3-4 times to the same area, just a gentle pull back, reel it in really quickly so as I'm not dragging it along the bottom too far. I want to just explore the area where I want to fish, and I'll have a look to see what I'm bringing in. If I bring in a lot of leaves, dead, horrible matter, black, stinky stuff, then I eliminate that as an area to fish, and I'll continue my search in the swim for somewhere where I can cast one of these out and reel it in each time with nothing on it. In fact, the only thing I want to be bringing in on this is a little bit of bloodworm to really confirm that that's an area where the carp are going to feed and where I'm going to get bites. So wherever possible when fishing in the silt, I'd like to use a bottom bait for the hook bait. This is because when you're baiting up with your freebies, they're going to sink into the silt, and the carp on these kind of lakes, they're used to digging in and picking up on the free offerings that have gone semi submerged, as you like, into the silt on the bottom. So I think it's, in this instant, really good to match the hatch, because a pop-up could be sat above their sort of noses. They're down in the silt, really digging around, picking up all those oily boilies that you've put in, and a pop-up could just be kind of missing the mark. So normally I'd go with a bottom bait. However, there will be times where I'd still go back to the old hinge stiff rig on these type of venues. Now, one instance could be if I've cast about with a grappling lead and I can't find anywhere that's coming in clean. So there's leaf debris and chod-like bits all over the area. Then I'd put a pop-up out and fish that over the top, because when you put your freebies out, they're going to be sitting on tops of bits of chod. Few will drop into the silt, few will be sitting on the chod. So I think in that instance, a pop-up just sat up there, it's going to be a lot cleaner presentation. Okay, maybe it wouldn't get you as many bites as a bottom bait would on clean silt where you can present it. However, I think it still gives you a better chance of a bite given the circumstances that you're fishing in. The other time when I'd put out a pop-up rig is when I'm fishing all my rods on one baited area. So rather than putting all 3 rods on the same area on bottom baits, putting all my eggs in one basket, so to speak, I'd put one rod out on a hinge rig with a pop-up, because quite often the bigger fish in the lake, for some reason they do seem to trip up on that blatant pop-up that sits off the lake bed. So I'd fish the 3 rods, 1 on the pop-up, 2 on the bottom baits, and just play it by ear. If that pop-up rod's the one that's doing more bites than the other 2, then I'd swap the other 2. If the bottom baits seem to be producing more than the pop-up, then the pop-up would come in and that would go out on a bottom bait. But rather than putting all 3 on the same presentation from the off, I would try a pop-up. It would be very silly to go to any lake just because it's silty and presume that a pop-up won't fish as well as a bottom bait. You've got to take every lake as you find it, and it can be from one day to the next it can change. So that would be my final tip. Make sure that you mix it up between bottom baits and pop-ups. Check that out for a great 19-pound ghostie from East Elf, caught using an array of tactics for dealing with silty venues such as the back lake here at East Elf. Absolutely made up with that. Hopefully you'll be able to get out and catch a few silt whackers too.